Alright, so welcome back everybody. Today we will be planning a mission to Eeloo and back. And with Eeloo being the 7th and furthest planet out orbiting Kerbin, it takes quite a bit of Delta V to get there and back. It's actually a dwarf planet, so the Delta V isn't really spent on maneuvers once you're in the sphere of influence, but it does take a lot of Delta V to get out and back. So we will be building a craft with at least 15,000 meters per second of Delta V. It's not too hard with this new massive hydrogen tank being introduced to KSP2. So we'll be utilizing that with the large nuclear engine. And as you can see, that gives us plenty of Delta V to get out there. We just have to design a booster to get it into low Kerbin orbit, and we will be golden. Alright, so here we are, we're just designing our booster. We're going to throw some stabilizer on it for some control. And then just to top off our power to give us a little bit better thrust to weight ratio, we will throw these solid engine boosters on, or solid fuel boosters I should say, and then we can just kind of fine-tune things, throw some strut towers on it, and send it over to the launch pad for launch. Alright, so after a successful launch, we will finalize our circularization here into low Kerbin orbit. This was like probably the worst launch and circularization I've had in a long time. I don't know what happened. But yeah, it wasn't too bad to correct, so we just went with it anyways. I'm gonna hop over into the map view and plan our maneuver. I have already set up our transfer window, so we should get a pretty good encounter. That's actually a Joule encounter you're seeing there. So we'll take it a little further out. Alright, and I think we can live with that, and then once we get out of Kerbin's sphere of influence, we can make some minor adjustments, and we should get an encounter no problem. But we're here at the maneuver node, so we're going to go ahead and start our burn. It's quite a long burn, 2,000 meters per second. We're going to aim for the descending node there. That's really the most efficient way to get out there. You're definitely going to want to use transfer window, or line up a transfer window, I should say, when going to Eeloo, because it would take substantial more Delta V to get there with inclination corrections, trying to get an encounter elsewhere. But like I said, I already had our transfer window lined up, so we won't have any problems with that. We get our encounter right there. We're just going to warp out to that point and then kind of freehand it We don't need a maneuver node. It kind of blocks what you're doing anyways, what you can see. So I like to just do it kind of free-handed. So we'll go ahead and adjust our orbit a little bit right there. And then we do end up having to make a slight correction out at our apoapsis just to fine-tune ourselves to get that good encounter. Also fine-tune it so we get a decent low encounter. Alright, that looks good. Like I said, we'll go ahead and head up to the apoapsis and work on our encounter out there. We have plenty of delta V, so it's not really too big of a concern to be as efficient as possible. It is good practice, but with the buggy state of KSP2, you definitely always want to have backup delta V. You'll see later in this mission, even, there's a bug where your orbit changes once you get out of the sphere of influence of any celestial body. Alright, so there we go. We'll make that last fine-tune adjustment to our orbit to get our encounter. And then we can focus on Eeloo to make further adjustments to bring ourselves in nice and low. Alright, there we go. That's what I'm doing now. Like I said, Eeloo is a dwarf planet, so it doesn't take much to make maneuvers once you're circularized in the sphere of influence of Eeloo, but it will take a substantial amount of delta V to kill off your velocity and circularize around Eeloo, because your orbit is going to be substantially different coming in, as we are coming from Kerbin, so we will be moving much slower than Eeloo at its orbit. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and get into this burn to circularize. It ends up taking about 2,000 meters per second of delta V. To circularize is you pretty much need to come to a complete stop with Eeloo having such low gravity. But we'll go ahead and bring our periapsis down. Our goal here is to circularize around the planet with our launch vessel that we flew out here with. We had our first stage, which took us into low Kerbin orbit, and then we are currently flying our vessel that's going to... It took us out here, and it will be responsible for taking us back to Kerbin. So we are going to park it in orbit about 60,000 kilometers, and then we will go ahead and hop back to our vessel and open up the payload, the cargo bay, get our lander out of here, and we'll be using it to land on the surface of Eeloo, and then launch back off of Eeloo and rendezvous with this vessel to where we can take this vessel back to Kerbin and land safely on Kerbin. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and wiggle this lander out of here. Takes a little bit of a jostling to get it out of there, as there's nobody in the return vessel right now. So I wasn't able to switch to it and pivot the lander out of it, which I normally do. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and begin our maneuvers for our descent onto Eeloo's surface. Go ahead and bring our periapsis down to about 20,000 kilometers, and then we can shoot for a flat spot once we get around to our periapsis to where we can get a visual on the surface. Okay, there we go. We're just riding over the surface of Eeloo there. It looks really good in KSP2. The planet models actually look great in my opinion. Modded KSP1 probably still looks just as good. But hopefully as this game matures and becomes more refined, all the bugs get worked out, the kinks get worked out, and this game becomes a much more stable state, which, as the filming of this video, there should be an update in a couple days. It just got delayed, but we should be getting an update here soon. Alright, so back to the lander here. We are just coming up on the surface of Eeloo. We're going to bring this thing down nice and easy. And perfect. That was actually one of my better landings I've ever had. Once again, it's very easy to land on Eeloo with the low gravity, but I was still proud of it. It was a very stable landing. You don't see that often, so. So here is Bill on the surface of Eeloo. I tried to get him. I reloaded a few saves. As you can see, he's very concerned. But this happened every time I tried to EVA with Bill. I tried to reload a few saves. That's, as you can see, that's what I did there. Try it again, maybe do some hopping. See if it was just that spot, and we'll give it another shot. But no, still the same thing. I even tried to, shoot over here a little bit, but still nothing. And I have seen this in other Eeloo missions for KSP2 on YouTube, so it's not just me. This seems to be a common bug. Hopefully they get these worked out. But unfortunately, we won't get to explore the surface much, so we're just going to go ahead and head back, as Bill is several years into this mission, so he's eager to get back to Kerbin. Okay, so like I said, it doesn't take a whole lot of Delta V to get back into orbit from Eeloo. So we're just going to go ahead and work on that, and then work on our rendezvous with our return vessel, which I had a lot of orbital degradation, which is a glitch in KSP. There's no atmosphere around Eeloo, so I shouldn't have any of that. As you can see, my orbit is vastly different than when I left my return vessel. The return vessel's orbit is vastly different, that is. But we're going to go ahead and start working on our maneuver to rendezvous with the return vessel. Unfortunately, like I said, there's nobody in our return vessel. I'm saying return vessel way too many times, but we won't be able to do any maneuvers in the return vessel because I unfortunately didn't put any unmanned drones on it, so I don't think it would have communications out here anyways. We have plenty of Delta V in our lander to do a rendezvous though, so we'll just go with that, and then we can correct our inclination once we rendezvous with the return vessel. Alright, so that looks good. We'll start working on that. We'll warp to that point and then begin burning retrograde in relation to the target. And that will begin to match our orbit with our return vessel. Here we go, we're getting our encounter here. We'll bring it in nice and close. We don't really need to dock with it, so we can just park it just inside 100 meters, and then Bill can just fly over using jetpacks. Okay, we'll go ahead and get him just a little closer. And then we can have Bill hop out and use RCS For some reason, a page popped up there. Another bug in KSP2. I've always found that it's extra buggy on return missions in KSP2. You can get by on missions, one-way missions, but round-trip missions get especially buggy. Alright, so here's Bill. He's flying back to the return vessel, and he's gonna hop in. Those mag boots make it very convenient to get back onto a vessel in KSP2, so that is nice about KSP2. But back to the mission at hand, we will go ahead and begin fixing our inclination so we can do our burn to get our Kerbin encounter while we're still in low Eeloo orbit. Just the most efficient way, so we'll go ahead and go with it. Okay, so that looks pretty good inclination-wise. We'll go ahead and begin planning our maneuver. We will be shooting out of Eeloo's sphere of influence in a retrograde manner in relation to its own orbit. Alright, but now that we've adjusted our maneuver to get a good encounter, we'll go ahead and start our burn. And this is a long burn. We're gonna go ahead and speed it up again so we don't have to sit through the whole thing. Alright, so that looks good. We'll go ahead and exit Kerbin's or Eeloo's sphere of influence. Our orbit got thrown off quite a bit there by the bugs from KSP2, so we'll go ahead and warp around and see what we get on this next one, and probably treat this as more of a rendezvous as opposed to, you know, utilizing that transfer window. So we'll bring in our apoapsis till we get a better approach. And then we can fine tune from there to get our encounter. Right, there we go. So this mission probably could have been done much more efficiently with gravity assists, but I'm not quite there yet. I am trying to improve my gameplay and my mechanics overall, so I will get there. I've been getting better. I hope that's, you know, reflecting in my videos. But yeah, I'm not as good as I'm going to get yet, I hope, so I hope the videos are only getting better from here. Okay, so here we're at our Kerbin encounter, and we'll go ahead and warp down to our periapsis and start our burn to circularize. And it is also a long burn, so we'll go ahead and fast forward through this burn. Okay, we're almost there. And that took quite a bit more delta V than I thought it was going to take. As you can see, we pretty much had to come to a complete stop again. We didn't have a low enough approach in our encounter, so it took quite a bit of velocity burned off to circularize there, but luckily we did have all that delta V. We were able to correct that no problem, and here we're going to just bring our orbit down to circularize. I know there's no heating, but I still like to come in on a nice easy approach. Heating will eventually be introduced in this game, so. But once again, this doesn't even have a heat shield. I try to just eliminate all joints at this stage in the game still. It's still a little wobbly. It probably wouldn't have been too much of an effect being that high up without having too much of a lever on that joint, but we'll go ahead and land in the desert here. Get a nice panoramic view of the desert. And a nice easy touchdown. Alright, well, as always, I really appreciate you guys watching. That's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe. And Bill's going to start his long walk back to the Space Center. So, as always, thanks for watching.